The dust hasn't settled yet, at least according to Jonathan Gannon. But of the moves in the last 48 hours, any of them you scratch your head and say, why did that happen?
There was a few that I said, and that's a little bit that I didn't expect. I'm not going to say surprised because I'm never surprised anymore. But it was interesting because yesterday, one of the ones I asked him about in his press conference with the media was the release of Chris Barnes. Not that he's the difference between making the Super Bowl or not, but he's a solid player, good inside linebacker, good on special teams, and it left them with only 3 inside linebackers on the roster. Well, here we are a day later, and after the rookie draft pick, third rounder cornerback Elijah Jones goes on injured reserve today, Chris Barnes is back. He was added to the practice squad immediately, and then today is added to the roster. So there's a good example of the dust never settles, and I always laugh when people call Tuesday the final cut. So that one was a little, I didn't expect it. Everyone seems up in arms about Michael Carter, and I understand he was, pretty good in certain situations. He's back on the practice squad. But essentially, they went with two guys. One, Emari DeMercado, who's a good third down back, which Carter can be as a pass catcher, but he's not a blocker. And that's a lot of times what you need to have in there, and pass protection. And DJ Dallas is probably going to be part of the return game. So keeping Carter would have been keeping 5 running backs, which means if he's active, it's only because there's injuries, because he's not going to play on special teams, and so he'd probably be inactive. So there's a few, but nothing, like I said, nothing overly shocking. Even though some people go nuts because oh my goodness, let's stop the NFL. The Cardinals didn't claim anybody on waivers yesterday, right? And I'm looking at the list of 26 guys. And I would ask any one of those people who have said that to look at the list and tell me, A, if you ever heard of those guys, and B, if you really think that any of them would be better than who the Cardinals have on the roster. So, there's a lot of overreaction. They did sign an interesting guy, though, Everyone kind of missed this. Julian Okwara, who is an outside linebacker. Everyone's saying, well, they didn't do anything to help the edge rush. Didn't do anything. Well, they signed him, played 4 years with the Lions, and I think was not a good fit for his skill set because he's not really a 4-3 outside linebacker. He's more of an edge guy on a 3-4. So who knows? We'll see if he's able to come in and and make any kind of impact. So the practice squad's now set, at least for now. Jonathan Gannon said the dust really won't settle until Monday when they start prep for Buffalo. But even then, we know there'll be changes after that because that's just the way of the NFL.
Howard, the Desmond Ridder getting cut surprised me a little bit, but the way I look at some of these cuts, Michael Carter, Barnes, and Desmond Ridder, the Cardinals are fortunate if their strategy was to go ahead and release them. Hopefully nobody picks them up and then bring them back at a lower salary, put them on the developmental, and then at some point, if they have to activate them, so be it. Do you think that might have been part of as far as financial moves to do some of that?
I think with Carter, it very well could have been because through performance escalators in his contract, his base salary this year was a little under $3.4 million. And well, that's a little high for a guy who's going to be at best, your 4th running back. And so I think that was definitely part of it. He's on the practice squad now. So if he comes back on the roster, guess what? He'll sign a contract for the veteran minimum. Mm-hmm. And
yes.
So, yeah, I think the Barnes one wasn't as much about that because I think that, he was around a minimum salary. Ridder was a bit more as a third round. No, he was on a minimum salary also. And I think with the quarterback, they just thought he'd get through waivers. So they bring him back on the practice squad. Gannon said yesterday that the competition is ongoing, and Clayton Tune knows there's competition every day. And he explained, which I wrote about on Cards Wire today, that they have portions of practice even in the regular season where they're not doing scout team stuff. They're doing real football, and that's a time for backups and guys on the practice squad to show that they're improving. So it's not a finished deal that forever Clayton Tune is going to be the number 2 quarterback. So, there's a lot of those different decisions that, come into play when you're doing your roster. And let's say this, a lot of it is, you get 2 elevations from the practice squad each game, right? Well, if you're deciding who to elevate, and sometimes it's better, there's flexibility. You bring a guy up from the practice squad rather than have someone on the active roster, the 53, who's going to be part of the initial 46. But with Carter, let's say you got a running back fix, or you got this, or you got that, and they want to play him in a game. Well, they just elevate him, and then he makes the minimum salary instead of the practice squad for that week, and the minimum salary obviously is a lot lower than what he was getting before. So all of those different thoughts go into not only the Cardinals, obviously, but all teams as they're slashing this roster to 53 and adding guys to the practice squad.
How would you define the rule that came down about the emergency quarterback scenario that just came down? Can you define that exactly? Is that 3 days before you have to activate him on the 53-man roster versus the emergency quarterback situation that you could almost call that the Brock Purdy rule of a couple years ago?
Right.
2?
It definitely is the Brock Purdy rule, and it was in play last year. And there, it was about half the league kept 3 quarterbacks. And so the only way you could have an emergency quarterback was to have a quarterback on the roster, on the 53. And then, they're just an extra guy, and they can only play in certain circumstances if the other 2 guys, get injured. Well, this year the league wanted to change it so you could have a quarterback on the practice squad and have him be the emergency quarterback. And for some reason, the NFLPA didn't want to do that. And what they were going to do also is, other players that have to go through the waiver system, if you can only be elevated a free elevation where you come up and go back without having to go through waivers, you can only do that 3 times with guys. And so if you want to do it more, then you're probably going to have to put them on the active roster.
Right.
Well, with the emergency quarterback on the practice squad, with the practice squad quarterback, they wanted that to be unlimited. So the speculation is, because the NFLPA hasn't said anything, that they didn't feel it was fair to have a quarterback locked on the practice squad that could be elevated any number of times, or at least the emergency quarterback any number of times. Well, here's the thing with that. I mean, you would probably have a lot more teams signing quarterbacks to the practice squad if they knew they could use them for the emergency quarterback. And the bottom line is, you've got 16 or 17 guys on the practice squad anyway. You've got 53 guys on the 53-man roster. So what's the difference how that's made up? So I don't understand why the NFLPA did that, but they decided they weren't going to go along with it, and so it reverts back to what the rule was last year. You have to be on the active roster of the 53 to be named the emergency quarterback.
Howard, as always, buddy, thanks for the time. Sorry about the goof up in the beginning, but that won't happen again. So thank you so much.
No problem. And I just want to say real quickly, there's some big news today, real quick, because 61 years ago in November, I can remember as a young boy watching Walter Cronkite on the news announce the tragic news that John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
Yes.
Well, of course, the journalism department at ASU is named after Walter Cronkite. Well, huge news today, guys. I mean, this is a long time coming. The winner of the 41st Walter Cronkite Award for Excellence in Journalism is, do we have a drum roll? Wolf Blitzer.
Wow.
The Wolfman.
Oh, my God.
The Wolfman.
Out of Buffalo.
Oh, wow. All
The
right.
Wolfman. He'll be coming to Phoenix. I think it's in next February
Cool.
for the big dinner and the award.
That's great.
So there we have it. Wolf Blitzer.
Okay.
All right, so breaking news there, buddy. Thank you. Appreciate it. Howard Balzer. You'll be number 42. So we appreciate
I'm
it.
sure I will be. Yeah.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Howard Balzer joining us. Follow him on Twitter at hbalzer721. That's hbalzer721. He is courtesy of our friends here at Twin Peaks. You're looking for a place to have your fantasy football draft?
Yes.
We'll have it here. And if you are the commissioner, they'll hook you up with a $50 bonus card. And everybody on your team will get a $5 bonus card. Just head into any of the 5 Valley locations and set up your draft at your fantasy draft, that is, at Twin Peaks. 5 locations. Coming up, what's on tap? Give you an update on what the Diamondbacks did today, and then we'll finish up here at Twin Peaks in Glendale. It's Rock of News with Jimmy B. Fox Sports 9.
Valley traffic from the